Here we go. Let's get started. Okay. So anyway, I'm Steve Simpson, and I work with Paul Marriott. Paul and I really started the Tech Club, and one of my dreams last year was to actually start a drone group because I really like drones. I like flying them. I like the photography aspect of them. That's kind of my passion. But Mark, you've had one longer than me. Your first one was which one?
The DJI Phantom 4.
Yeah, the Phantom. And you never did get a battery for that, did you?
No, I haven't used it for so long. The batteries went bad, and they're like $185 each.
Yep.
It takes more than one, right?
No, I take it.
One will do it. I thought there were more money than that for some reason.
That's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough for that month.
For two
Yeah.
batteries, you can buy a mini.
Yeah.
Who else is new? You are?
I'm new, Cliff Gilbert.
Okay, I'm sorry, Cliff?
Cliff Gilbert,
Okay, welcome.
Gilbert County Success, Record Success. For us people that had those toys,
Hi, Adam. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Was that your family company? I wish it was. No. I was just the envy of the kids in my neighborhood. I had my own toys with my name splashed
Yeah,
across
that's cool.
Well, welcome.
the intro.
Who all has a drone current? Everybody? Don, you don't have one.
Cliff does.
Okay. Well, you don't have to have a
A
drone to be a part of this group. We're the Tech Club and the Drone Special Interest Group. We have no membership dues, but we do try to keep it exciting and to the point, and so we'll change up the subject each month. Next month, what we think we're going to do is called the Show Us Your Stuff. And so we want you to come and show us whatever you've got that you're most impressed with in regards to a drone. It could be an accessory, it could be a new drone, okay? It could be that you don't have anything, you're just interested in it and you don't have to show anything. But I think we've got enough people here with drones that we can bring some interesting things to show, okay? So, and Dennis has got a billboard that he puts on his. He'll demonstrate that next month, yes. Well, maybe we'll fly it outside, Dennis, next month.
Yeah.
Okay, time changes,
I can always fly it in here.
right? So anyway, all good things, okay? So I think at this point, any questions that we do in here? Okay. Well, I'll turn it over to Dennis, all right? Dennis and I both have nicknames. I am
Pretty
Security.
Say in public?
Yes, well, I am Security Scat Steve, Scat Cat, but I call it Scat. Well, won't go into that, what that means, okay? And Dennis's is, go ahead, Dennis, tell him what yours is.
I don't keep up with it.
Daredevil Dennis.
All right.
So what that means is I'm very conservative on flying, you know, and fly in the snow, okay? Won't fly through fountains. Oh, I mean, I won't fly it in the water, okay? Where Dennis, he takes it out and, man, I tell him, I can't see it, but he can because he's got a background, right, Dennis? So why don't we do this? Why don't I turn it over to you now and you go ahead and let's roll it.
All right, before we start the video and whatnot, or?
It's already started.
Okay. Well, actually, I'm a retired helicopter pilot from the Air Force. I was a test pilot. I was also a rescue pilot, and I caught drones in midair. So I had a really varied career, and I flew a wide range of Air Force, Marine, Navy, and Army helicopters. So I also had radio control helicopters since the 70s. In the mid 70s, the Dubro helicopters were interesting, to say the least, trying to fly. So the Whirlybird, especially with the engine, had just a glow fuel engine on top of it, and the torque from the engine turned the rotors, and a blade up on top, about an 8-9 inch blade, provided part of the lift. But it had popsicle sticks for the tail rotors, literally. So if you broke something, it was easy to fix, but it was very interesting trying to fly, especially with the radios back then with no gyros or anything else. It was all hands-on. So I have a lot of experience with rotary carriers, both full size and smaller. I actually have 3 drones. I have 2 from Sharper Image. One my daughter got me, one my wife got me. They're both indoor types only, little small ones. And then my wife kind of pushed me into coming to the first drone meeting last October, and I did. And I ended up buying that mini Fly More combo with the extra batteries and whatnot. I put everything into my camera bag, except for the screen. And Steve and I went flying, and we continued to fly. And I've got some pictures I'll go through and show you, but we've done some tracing each other through the sky, not really formation flight, just watching each other. It becomes a Where's Waldo type moment, if you're familiar with that, because the drone is so small that once it gets more than 50, 60 yards away, you can't see it really on a phone screen, and even on a small pad, it's all but impossible. And of course, he was flying up to a quarter mile away, and he set up the camera this way, so I'm kind of going to be talking into the camera. But in any case, that's my background. But I push things to the limit, especially the last part of my career. I only broke my neck 3 times.
Wow.
So they finally told me it was enough. And the Pentagon said, no, it's not. We need you down here because you write artificial intelligence programs. So they drafted me for a year, even though I was on medical hold. I went down the Pentagon and wrote programs that were smarter than most of the people at the Pentagon. So,
Does that say much?
no, I actually had to report to a 3-star who was my boss about a month or 2 after I got there, because I was working for Secretary of the Air Force. And he asked me how I liked the place. And I said, well, about 85% of the people are trying to build their own little empire or get promoted, and the other 15% are doing the work. He said, you actually believe that? And I said, sir, I'll walk you around and point them out to you.
Wow.
And he really thought 60, 70% of the people there were working. They weren't. Not on their jobs.
Yeah.
They were either trying to get promoted, or they were building a little empire so that they could transfer over to civilian life. They had contacts over in Congress and with a lot of the civilian industry. So it was pretty incestuous. But that was what it worked.
What did he do with the knowledge you gave him?
Not a thing.
Yeah.
I told him that I was being ordered to steal computers off the loading docks before they were ever brought into the system and given to congressional aides so we get information on the budget as to what was possible and what was not. And he said, yep, that's the way it works, so go ahead and keep doing it.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. It's part of the deep system.
Well, at that rank, they were all half political. I won't say they were all. A good many of them were. I met a few of them. Empty Smith, MT, called it Empty, was one. Generally, if they were over 6 feet, they were pretty decent. If they were less than about 5'8", they were not somebody who would be around. You got it. Not every one of them, but the majority had some kind of height complex, and they really pushed it. And you can see, I mean, look at SAC. That's where that came from. So,
Well, what do you got for us tonight?
well, tonight I've got a little slideshow and what we're going to talk about. And like I say, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to be talking into the camera. But I do high risk flying. I fly a lot at night. I fly high. I fly in high winds. I fly very low. I fly over water, sometimes through water, not intentionally. But in general, as you can see up on the screen, if you take one of these drones, which are stabilized and the camera is stabilized, and you get enough wind blowing, it will tilt into the wind to the point where the gimbal no longer has the ability to stay straight or level. and it will turn with the drone. And you can see in this case, I've got about 20 degrees of tilt on the gimbal, which means the drone was almost 45 degrees into the wind.
What causes this?
The wind.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically what happens is, I'm gonna use my hand like a fighter pilot. But what happens is, you've got two surfaces. You've got the gimbal and you've got the drone. They're mounted together, but the gimbal is free floating in 3 axes. So as the drone turns, the gimbal stays level. Now, once it reaches a certain point, it hits the mechanical lock on the gimbal, and then they both tilt. So when I get to 45 degrees on the drone, I've got 20 degrees on the gimbal. And what happens is, if the wind is coming from my right, the drone will tilt into the wind to try and hold position, because it's got the little sensor down on the bottom of it. The one you have also has it. But in any case, it has a sensor on the bottom, and it will try to stay in the same place. And as it does, the more wind hits it, the more it tilts. And if you get a nice heavy gust, it'll tilt fairly fast and it'll drift a little bit, but it'll try to come back. Well, you can see here, I had about 35-mile-an-hour wind gust hitting it, coming around the house there. And as it did, it would tilt excessively, but I wanted to get to the snow. So this is part of high-risk flying. I'm very close to the house, which is not a good thing for most people. I'm very close to myself, which is one thing I recommend you do not do. And I was out flying in very high winds because I wanted to get pictures of the snow before it went away. And that was just the way it was. It was also about -8 to -15 degrees wind chill. It was only about 6 degrees outside at the time. So it was.
How does the wind chill affect your flying?
It doesn't affect mine really. It affects the battery. I got about 17 minutes instead of 27 minutes of flying time. When I'll speak to it a little bit later, but when you're in very cold wind chill and you start tilting into a very high wind, you can actually watch the percentage of the battery power left go down like a speedometer dropping when you take your foot off the gas. It goes like 80, 70, 60, time to come back real quick. And so that's the one thing you do notice. The batteries really have a problem. The propellers are more efficient. The blades are much more efficient in cold, dry air. So they actually have more lift. You get better response for the same power, but you don't get the amount of power available. It just drains really fast. In fact, when you take it out in cold weather, the first thing you do is you put it up into hover for about 30 seconds to warm the battery up. That way you stabilize the battery temperature before you go fly, and you make sure that nothing else is going to be so cold that it doesn't work. And it does it at 3 feet instead of 300. So that's always a good idea. As I said, Steve and I started out together. I painted mine tiger striped. You can see it sitting beside me. It's orange with black stripes down beside me on the bench. And Steve's flying too, taking a picture of us over at the memory guard. We actually flew a number of times together now. And it's nice if you have somebody to fly with. You can take pictures of each other's drones. If you lose sight of your drone, then your fly buddy may be able to pick it up or maybe watching it for you. And it's not a bad thing. Good company. Example, we went over to Gardenia, one of the little stub streets, and we're flying. And you can see his drone is fairly visible right here. As I said, if you get within about 50 yards or less, you can actually find the things. But the color of the drone actually matches a lot of the shades on the ground. So once it gets down low and moving, it becomes Where's Waldo. And he actually flew it not out to the houses you see over to the right, but about half that distance over to the side. And also did some maneuvers. In one case, a helix which is an automated maneuver that the drone does. And in trying to find him, I suddenly saw his drone go zipping by mine about 6 to 8 feet away.
Wow.
So I was busy looking one way and the drone was flying another and trying to keep track of my drone and his drone at the same time when they're going different directions makes life a little interesting. But when I was in rescue, I had to talk over 5 radios at one time and maintain 3 to 5 aircraft direction. So
Who was your
we
air
get
traffic?
back to it. We had none.
Yeah.
King was
You were-
basically
you were-
the closest we had, which was the refueling bird. We had a bunch of kibitzing from headquarters and other places in squadron, but they were many miles away and had no idea what was going on. I've actually changed the blade on a small island in the Bahamas, and some guy in Illinois wanted to tell me if I could or couldn't fly the aircraft. And I was a functional check pilot, which meant I flew anything that was broken before anybody else did to make sure it would fly. And I said, okay, sure. And then I went and flew, and he came along and gave me permission. I said, okay, sure. And then went ahead and flew some more. And they told me I'd have to stay in the Bahamas overnight because the sundown was going to hit before I got outside the airspace. I said, don't worry about it. I was almost out of the airspace by that time anyway. And I recorded one of the shortest flight times from the Bahamas, Great Stirrup Cay to Patrick Air Force Base that any fixed wing has a log, much less a helicopter. As you can see, this is the bottom of my Mini, and notice the little cross on the bottom. That is an LED strobe. And the reason it's there, you'll see in just a moment. But I wanted you to see that at twilight, you can see the drone fairly well. And of course, this is very close, but you can see the drone fairly well, even if it's gray against a gray sky. But the minute it starts going away, it's much better to have something like this. Now it's a little bit blurred because I'm trying to hold the camera and I'm trying to hold my controller and everything else at one time. But you could say that that is much better than this if you're trying to watch it or find it, especially if you look down, take a picture, look back up, and you want to find it. Okay, now the little dot in the center of the screen is a drone at about 200 feet. Not very far away, really, but it's there. Now, if you look very, very carefully, you'll see a little tiny green light flashing. That's the DJI light on the back of the drone that flashes to tell you it's operating correctly. And they say you can use it to locate the drone. This didn't suit my needs because I was going just a little further away. So now the strobe fires. And you can tell where the drone is. And you can fly further away and still maintain visual line of sight if the strobe counts as visual line of sight. Now they've come up with new regulations just this year. You have to have 2 strobes that flash at different rates. So you have orientation of the drone. Given that the strobes do the orientation, I would argue that it also gives you visibility. So thereby two strobes that you can actually see, which are out to 3 miles, are sufficient to say you have visual line of sight. And I'll show you what happens when you lose visual line of sight because you get so interested. Another thing, one of the things in the flying is you maintain a scan. Part of the time you look at your instruments inside, part of the time you look outside. So you know what's going on outside, and you also know what's going on with your aircraft and your radios and your navigation and all that good stuff. Well, the drone is very similar. You have a lot of information other than just a picture on your phone, your pad, or whatever you're using to fly with. You also have to look out and watch where your drone's going. If you're flying at night, your visual cues are pretty limited. So looking down at your pad or your phone is not doing you a lot of good. And looking up into the sky full of stars and seeing the flashing light doesn't give you a lot of information at times either. You have a little bit better. This is actually at twilight. You can just barely see the skyline. The picture is a little dark actually. And this was about Christmas time, so there was a lot of ground light, and it gave you quite a good horizon to fly off of as long as you stayed up high and pointed in the right direction. If you went in the opposite direction where there was new construction or prairie, it was all black. So this becomes risky. There's actually a plane in the distance out there. That's that little light above the horizon. That's a strobe light. There are a few towers out there also. But the thing is that flying a drone at night is quite a challenge. It's not for a beginner. It's something where Steve likes to stay within 100 feet or so to be able to see it because night vision can be a problem. And I would definitely recommend that you're comfortable with your drone before you even attempt to fly at night. Daytime, a little bit different. Here I am at about 400 feet. I'm looking south. The front gate is to the lower left there. You can see the glare of the pond. To the right side is another pond with two fountains in it. That's right beside the model homes. And the picture-in-picture is covering over the athletic center. But that's all right. Either way. That's the athletic center over to the right there. And we're looking south down towards the front gate. This picture is looking out to the west. And it shows the new construction over to the right and part of the golf course. And notice the glare on the ponds. Oops. How they're kind of a silvery blue. And out in the distance, you can see fairly well in this one, but a lot of days you can't see very far because of the water vapor in the air. You'll find that much blue in your picture, if you're looking at your phone or looking at your pad, is about all you want to bring out the color on the ground. The higher you get, the darker the ground gets. You can see here. Here I've got almost half and half. You can see the white layer out there on the horizon. You can also see how dark the houses are. The only real difference in the two pictures is how much of the sky I have, which tells the drone how much of the aperture to open. Actually, it's not the aperture, but anyway, it's the way it adjusts for the light. And there's also a white level. You should leave on automatic until you get used to it, because then if you don't, your pictures will turn out orange or blue. But there are a number of adjustments you can make. This is something else you shouldn't do. Because I have this strobe light on the bottom of my drone, if I land it on concrete, it tears the LEDs up. If I land it in the grass, they get into the drone and it tears the drone up. So I've adopted something that a number of people have done. And occasionally I will hand launch and hand catch the drone. It's not recommended. I use the top of my golf cart. I also got one of the fabric flip open landing pads. Much safer, and both of them protect my LED. You can get some real nice pictures. Here you see the athletic center. And this is from about 250 feet up. Now, take a look at that pond over center left. Notice the reflection of the trees and the nice blue cover. That is from a polarizing filter. You can get sets of filters and they can get expensive. And people ask what they mean. Well, the polarizing is self-explanatory. It takes out a lot of glare and reflective light, and more of the direct light appears. The ND filters are like sunglasses. They get darker the filter, the higher the number, the darker your sunglasses. It's a little bit different from that, but that's the effect of it. Again, notice the horizon is white. That is all water vapor in the air here in Texas. Now we got down to where we're looking at the complex. On the left are the model homes and the pond with the fountains, which will be more important in a few minutes. You can see the athletic center. You can see the CHCC in the center right there. You can also see the grill, the pro shop, and the clubhouse, and the parking, and then a good bit of the driving range and the course itself. This obviously was taken without the polarizing filter on it because you can see the glare on both ponds. There is a flying field here in Denver. One of the things about the new regulations, it says if you have a CEB, which is an approved civilian or They've applied for a license field or flying area, which we technically could do here at Robeson. Then you can fly in that area at any time without prior approval, as long as you stay within the confines of the CV. In this case, we went up to take some pictures, and I'm taking a picture of Steve flying his Mavic 2 Pro with the orange props using his Mini 2. Meanwhile, he's working on the camera to have the gentleman that happened to be there take pictures of us. If you look close, you'll see the gentleman's left side, his left side, right side as we look is blurred. That's because this is what's called an AEB photograph. It's one of the functions of a Mavic, or Mini 2, not a Mavic, but a Mini 2, made by DJI. It takes 3 photographs to get one. It takes one underexposed, it takes one normal, it takes one overexposed, and then it combines them using algorithms, and you come up with a picture that's clearer and has more definition. I actually took the photo, and then Steve put it in Adobe Lightroom and enhanced it, but this is basically what you saw. This is using the polarizing filter, and this is my first distance flight. And you've all seen the big tall power lines out to the east. The line of those power lines is right along that road that you see at the top right in the background. I actually went out to this pond at the request of a friend, and also because I wanted to make a distance flight, to check the coyotes. And I flew all the way around the edge of that pond. But while I was doing it, I had to maintain awareness, situational awareness again, because those high tension wires were right behind me when I went around the east side of the pond with the drone facing towards the pond. This is the west side, so I'm actually quite a distance away from the towers. But I got within about 100 to 150 feet of the tower and the power lines circling this. So again, maintaining situational awareness is important. Now, I could see the drone, but I could not see how close I was to the towers without looking at the video. At night, you can see I land on the top of my golf cart. The drone's coming in for a landing. You can also see how bright the pad gets, because during the daytime you run the brightness of your phone or your pad all the way to counteract the light. If you don't remember to turn it back down at night, it stays quite bright. But again, there's not a lot of visual cues to let you know what's going on. So get real comfortable with your drone before you start night flying. This picture was because Mars and Jupiter are both in the sky. You can see them center left there. And that's why I took the picture like I did, but it points out something else. On the Mini and the Mini 2, you can, once it's in the air, adjust the gimbal so it will lift up about 20% to 30% above normal horizon. You cannot go above level until you get it in the air and flick a little toggle on your controls. But once you do, you can actually look up. And when it gets dark, you can take pictures of the moon, you can take pictures of the stars, although it will not let you look directly straight up. Like I say, about a 30-degree angle. Look up. Of course, if you fly it real fast, it'll tilt up and you can get a little bit more out of it. So there are tricks. But again, that's high risk flying, especially at night. And all these lights are because of Christmas. Right now, 10% of what you see there is what you would have. But it is a twilight photograph. My second distance flight was down at the North Lake Water Tower. You saw out past the front gate. As you're going out the front gate, if you look down over to the right, you'll see this in the distance. And I actually flew out and around it and took pictures to show that I'd actually been there. And it was good practice to see if I can maintain visual contact with the drone and still get that far away. Oh, close on to 2/3 of a mile away
From where?
from the front gate, just past the front gate area. And as I flew back, I had the polarized filter on. I took a picture of the front gate area. And it gave me a nice picture. It also showed one of our usual happenings here at the ranch with the fire truck going out the front gate because they've been called in along with one of the ambulances. Unfortunate but true here, but it gives you a good overview of the front gate and where the ponds are and how it's set up. And since I was there, I decided I'd be a little adventurous. So I went down to the pond over by the bridge coming in, and you can see it's stone faced, which you don't notice normally when you're driving across it because you're paying attention to traffic and you don't see the side of it, of course. It also has these nice little arches under it. And being a pilot, flying under bridges is one of the things that we just like to do. So right now I'm about 4 feet, and I'm at the level with about the top of the arch, as you can see. However, if you transition underneath it, you end up about 18 inches above the water, which gives you a nice view looking up at the fountain on the other side. And if you continue forward a little further, once again, getting into high risk. Not that flying over the water this low is not high risk. It is to a point. You notice the ripples in the water? That allows the visual system on the drone to maintain altitude. If this were perfectly still, which it sometimes is, you would no longer have the visual sensor on the bottom getting a good reading, and you would not have altitude hold, especially going underneath that bridge, because you'd lose your GPS lock and your visual component at the same time. One, because it would be smooth water, and two, because it would be darker. So you do not have altitude hold at night either, because it has, unless there are lights underneath it, it has no reference. So it does not know where the ground is. And every time the strobe fires, it makes it interesting when you're reaching out for it. It sees the ground, and if it's close enough, it bounces upwards. So as you're coming in for a landing, it's sort of like a pogo stick to some degree. And of course, being myself, I decided to go over and take a closer look at the rocks. And if anything happens or you move the stick the wrong way, I'll guarantee you, you're going to break the drone. You're either going to put it in the water, you're going to hit the rocks and break something off of it, or you're going to do both. Because you can see I was over the water at this point. But I thought it was an interesting picture. Now, come to my nemesis here. Okay. At the far end of the pond, you'll see a little dot. That's actually my cart, which is legally a motorized wheelchair. And when I'm driving it. And I'm sitting there flying my drone, and I've just gone over the model homes, and I looked at this, and I got to get a picture of me down low flying along the water, because the closer you get to the ground, the more the illusion of speed. Now notice on the right side is the golf course, and you can't really tell it very well, but as it gets to the green, it goes up about 12 feet. You see the sand trap indicates that. So there's a little hill there. Now this time I'm flying from the end of the pond, so that's no issue. In a minute, I'll be flying from here at the CATC while my wife is at the bank, and it became an issue. As you can see, I flew along about the height of the spray, stayed well away from the water, and flew back over to my cart. And I wasn't real low to the water. This was only about my 12th flight. I've only got 41 flights on the drone so far. So I have a lot of flying experience, but not drone experience. And then I decided I'd fly closer, but I lost connection, and boom.
Oh my goodness.
Now, understand, what happened was, as the movie started, I can play it again, and you just watch it as it goes through. I was actually over here. I was watching the drone, I was watching the picture. Of course, I'm closer to the water. I'm about 3 feet, maybe a little less, but about 3 feet. And I'm watching the water go by pretty fast, and I'm really enjoying the picture. And I look up and I see the drone, I look down, I see the picture, and I spin the drone over and I look back here to the CATC. You see that? You see it rotate, look at the CATC. As I rotated it back to check where the fountain was, I did not recognize the hill. It was there, but I was so engrossed with flying over the water that I lost situational awareness and I lost visual line of sight with the drone. The other bad thing. And between the two of them, what I saw on my picture, which the slide got removed when this was put in, but the picture actually went to what's called pixelate. All I saw were pixels. I saw browns and greens and blues with a little bits of the fountain showing as the drone decided to drive straight through. And as you saw, now what happened was I saw it. I realized I was losing control and I hit full up on the control. Now, when you hit full up at speed, it tilts the drone forward so it goes faster as well as trying to go up because I hit both sticks. I was already at max speed. So you'll notice just before it hits the fountain that it noses down and flies through at about a 30-degree nose low attitude. Now it looks like it's going to crash in the grass. You see it zip over the rocks on the edge. Look closely as it goes over, you'll see the rocks go by, and then you see the grass. And at that point, the gimbal started oscillating to the point where it blurred. And I'm going to play it one more time so you can see what I was talking about.
Now you gotta go back.
I got to go back. Okay, there. It'll start now. Or will it? Let's go back one more. Okay, there it is. See, I looked at the CATC. I did not look at the hill. It took over itself. There it nosed down, trying to climb. It hit the water, cleared the rock. It's at an 18-inch hover at that point with the gimbal oscillating.
Wow.
Because I let off on the stick. I held my controller straight up over my head, regained pixelated picture, lifted it up in the air, got the blurred picture, cycled it between return to home and manual mode, and flew it back. Now at that point, I did not know it had gone through the fountain. I thought it might have gone over. I thought I had gotten up in soon enough. However, this was not so. And the clue was that the picture was oscillating on me. Well, when it steadied down, it flew back. And when I turned to land, I suddenly had these circular rainbows in my picture, which indicated to me I had drops on the lens.
Yeah.
I had drops all over the drone and the drone. I immediately shut it off, pulled the battery, took it home, let it dry for 3 days. And it flew again, but it was not reliable. It had a tendency for the motors to quit for a second or two and some other bad things. So here I was testing. Now, one thing, as I told you, you can overcome the ability of the gimbal to stay level. You can do it with the wind. You can also do it with hard aerobatic type maneuvers. In this case, shifting direction back and forth. That shadow at the top left, that's not a problem with the picture. That is actually the rotor blades. And it's because I had gone hard right and then come back hard left, full hard left at speed, and overcame the ability of the gimbal, and you saw the rotor blade. Now, this is not good for your drone. It really does tax the motors and puts a good bit of torque on the arms. But then again, I put a good bit of torque on the arms anyway. So here is the longest flight I've made to date. I flew over to the Argyle water tower, and that was about 3 miles from where I was at the time. I started getting some, when I got on the back side of it, I started getting some signal degradation, possibly due to the equipment that's up on top of the water tank, possibly due to somebody having a fairly hefty local area network in one of the nice houses that was right there. But I was able to fly out, fly around it, take some pictures and fly back. I did have to fly around the Denton Airport control zone. And if you look on a map, you'll see it's like a key almost. It comes down just short of the Robeson Boulevard, or not Robeson Boulevard, Robeson Ranch Road. And it starts at that hill with the trees on it. As you're coming from the exit over to Robeson Ranch, you look over to the right on Ross Perot Jr.'s property, you see a hill with trees on it. That is the edge of the fly zone for Denton. That's a no-fly area. If you fly your drone up to that, it will stop in midair. That's one of the functions of DJI. Also, Hicks has some issues. But you'll be flying along and it just stops and says, no, I'm not going that way.
How does it work like that?
It's using a GPS system that tells it where it is. And they've programmed it in so that the minute it comes in within range, it stops. And the only thing you can do is either turn around or go sideways. In my case, I just turned and went sideways, went south of the Robeson Ranch Road, and went the rest of the way over the water tower. And on the way back, I avoided it. I did, however, take a picture as I went over the high tension lines. Now, this is another thing that is not recommended. Those lines have a lot of electricity going through them, which means they're giving out a magnetic field and also an electronic field. And because they're there, they feed on each other, so it can stretch out pretty good ways. And in this case, you can see I was about 50 feet above the tower as I went over it, just flying down to get a good picture of it. I've got it from several angles, but not recommended. It's a good way to lose signal. Now, I did have the drone set up that if it lost signal, it would return to home, so it would climb to a safe altitude, which in this case was almost 200 feet because of the hills that were around. And it would have returned directly to where it took off from. Now you can, if you happen to move, see, I decided I couldn't see the drone well enough, and I moved down towards the front gate, watching the drone instead of being up towards the north side of the property. I could have reset the home point, which is a function in it. Then the drone, when it would hit return to home, would return to me, where I was after I moved. If you do not reset return to home, it will go back to where you launched from, no matter where you go. This is really important if you happen to be in a boat and you launch it, or if you're out somewhere and you launch it and you drive somewhere else. It's going to go back to where you launched it from unless you reset return to home before you lose contact with the drone. Again, you can take nice pictures. Now, this one is not nearly the quality you can get because this is just a frame out of a video that I was flying over. And I had it set to 2.7K, but it was taking video. So if I had stopped and taken a photograph, I would have gotten a much clearer picture, much better color. But an evening picture, twilight or close to nighttime, without anybody there, is a nice picture. However, even if you don't fly directly over a person, if they are in the photograph, you have to have their permission before you show that photograph to anyone else. And you are not really supposed to take their photograph without their permission.
You're not supposed to fly over them either.
Well, I just said you don't fly over them. You don't fly over people, you don't fly over moving vehicles unless you have a 107 license. If you have a 107 license, they've changed some of the rules. But as a hobbyist, I don't fly over people. Now, if you notice the flight path, it's actually threading in between where the lounges are. So I would not technically have flown over anyone if they had been in the lounge. If they'd been walking around, I would have had to move as I flew to avoid flying over them. Not that I couldn't. And you can see I was fairly low in this case, probably about 150 feet at the most, maybe as low as 75. But I dropped down to where it filled the picture. Then, after my little water incident, as Steve mentioned, we replaced him with drone. That was me. And I went over to Steve's, we got it, and we went out and decided to fly some, and he's actually over to the right behind the bushes there, working with his to set the compass. I'm sitting at the base of a bush at the end of the golf path there. You can just see my crossed legs. Now, and it's important here because notice the bush to the low right. Okay, and it's in line with the drone, and I'm testing out the new drone. With me, that means doing things you should not do. So I brought it over to me, and then I took it and went full speed right back at this bush. As I approached the bush, because I had no real awareness of depth perception at that distance, I hit the brakes, and fortunately I stopped short of the bush. I say fortunately because I had been flying a Mini 2 for a friend, setting it up for him, and gotten used to the lightweight and quick reactions of a Mini 2. I then went back to my Mini, which is heavier, more inertia, so it carries further, and it has less power, so it reacts slower. This time, I gauged correctly looking down at the video. Okay? Then I decided to make a high-speed run back to me and land the drone.
Do some pruning.
Well, looking at the drone, I misgauged because I was thinking two and stopping within a certain distance. And when I hit the stop, it did not stop.
And I heard it did too. I go, wow, he just got that back about 1 hour ago.
Yep. Now notice the nice thing about this was, I'm very fortunate. See all the little tiny twigs and limbs? Head acted basically as a safety net. I had hit full stop, so it hit it and immediately went vertical. So it was flat to the bush. So as it hit, you saw this, and then you saw this. But see all the little twigs?
Yeah.
That stopped. I'd already hit stop, but in any case, that helped stop the props. There was no damage to the gimbal. There was no damage to the props, nothing to the arms or anything else. Didn't even take the decals off. But it was an example of flying two different type drones, which Steve has a Mavic 2 Pro, very heavy, fast drone. He also has a Mini 2, a very light, fast drone, and their flight characteristics are totally different. So never fly at anything, fly to miss it, okay? You can see that I was not flying to miss. I was flying to bring it over so I could just land it right beside me. And what I should have been doing was flying it to the other side of me, or above, because you can see a shadow of a vehicle there to the side of the bush. But this was just a very poor judgment on my part. As Steve says, I tend to fly very aggressively.
You do.
I also fly at high winds, well above the rated ability of the drone. Now, of course, we had a first day of snow. We had snow out. We had 25 to 35 mile an hour gusts. It was -8 degrees. You can see that I'm only at about 75 feet. The drone was really working to stay in the air, but I wanted some pictures of the snow. But you can see the wind was so hard, it kept the windward side of the roofs completely clean, and the backwind sides were covered in snow, the downwind sides. Also, your fingers and gloves do not work on the touch screen. You have to take your gloves off. Or you can get some PGY Tech little finger gloves where the tip actually folds back off of your one finger so you can touch the screen, or two fingers, whatever you want to use. But that, or fingerless bicycle gloves, which let the ends of your fingers freeze at -8 degrees plus wind. This was without wind chill. This was -8 degrees, no wind chill.
Wow.
Not in it.
And then that evening, I went back and flew some more, and I was fortunate enough to get one right as the sun touched the horizon, so I got kind of a nice picture. Again, dropping the gimbal down so that I got some color in the houses. And if Steve had this light room, he could bring the color in the houses up quite a bit. And he could probably add a little bit more rows to the horizon. This is exactly what you get right off the drone. And notice that Robeson Ranch Boulevard was still snow covered. Very little traffic goes out. None in the cul-de-sac there.
You didn't have to worry about flying over people that day.
No, you can see they were not exactly a bunch of people walking dogs or anything else on that particular day. Then the next day, we got 5 inches of snow. It was 6 degrees. I got 17 minutes of flight time, and the wind chill again was well below zero, close to -20. Not at this altitude, though. This altitude was only about 150 feet up. When I got up to about 400 feet, I had a -20 wind chill factor. I only got 17 minutes of flight time, and I was able to get a little bit higher, take some more pictures. Top left of the screen up there is Steve's house. That's actually where Crestview comes over and joins in on the far side on the west.
Goodland right there.
Yes, that's Goodland. It curves over and
Forces
in.
off to the right.
And if you look to the very far horizon down there, that's where we're taking the Christmas pictures. That one set of tree and two trees that were decorated are directly opposite us there. I had a couple strokes and a heart attack, and I have a lousy memory. What's the west road over there we're on, Steve?
Where?
The west road where we're taking the Christmas pictures?
Michelle.
Michelle Way.
Yeah.
Okay, that's Michelle Way right on the, below the green on the horizon there. You can see the brown streak, that's Michelle Way. On the top left there, it joins in the Crestview, and if you come back Crestview this way, just before you get off screen is Steve's house. Now, I pushed it up to 400 feet, which is the maximum legal altitude to fly a drone around here. In fact, anywhere in the United States. Other countries, you can go higher. And that's above the ground. Understand, if you take off on a hill and you go over a valley, you're supposed to drop down in the valley, even if you're flying minus on indication. If it says you're at minus something feet, you're still supposed to be there because you're only allowed to be 400 feet above the ground. Some people think it's above your takeoff point. Not true. You're also not allowed to take off as a hobbyist from the top of the building and fly 400 feet from the top of the building. If you have a 107 license, then the rules change a bit. Now in this case, once again, I'm pushing. You see on the lower right, that little black patch, that's actually a green. Just beyond it, you can see a curve. That's a dam, and that's a pond that's totally frozen with snow on it. And you can see the stream coming out the bottom of the dam and meandering along the golf course. Okay? To get this picture, I got up into 40-knot gust. The Mini will not fly 40 miles an hour. It tops out at about 26. Maybe 31 on a good day, especially in a dive. But what I did was I took it up, minus 12 degrees, 40 knots of wind gusting. And as it reached maximum ability to hold stable, I let it drift with the wind. It was at full power against the wind. I let it drift with the wind, took the picture, then brought it down to a lower altitude and recovered the drone at lower wind speeds. Not recommended. One, it's too darn cold. The battery could have quit at any time. It was dropping like I had put 4 times the size of motors on the drone. You could actually see the power indication drop, which if you can see it visually dropping, you know, either the battery is dead or it's in very cold conditions. But I did get it back and I got the picture I was looking for. But not something that anybody with any sense or a beginner should even attempt. And again, notice how the horizon is totally grayed out. You can actually see, if you look close, under the O of pond is the tower, the water tower for Argyle. And that is about 3 miles away. Not quite that from this point, from where I was flying before it was. This is within also within the Denton control zone. If you fly within this zone, you're supposed to file an LAANC, which is a certification, and you can file it via the computer, and you'll get almost instant return from the computer telling you, yes, you can fly up to 400 feet, because the control zone is only down to 400 feet at this point, but the footprint is still there, so you still have to file to be legal. Whether you're hobbyist or 107, you're still required to file. So be aware of that. Same thing for over on the west side with Hicks. You have to pull up the maps. There are a variety of programs out there that show them. Even the DJI software, Flight Path, shows it. It shows the control zone, and it does cut the northeast corner of the current construction. And it goes all the way over to the Michelle Way, up at the top of Michelle Way where the construction is right now. Hicks Field is also there on the west side. For what reason, nobody knows, since it's just a dirt strip, but it is there. So once again, you have to file to be legal. It's not difficult. Put in your name, your address, your phone number, where you're flying, how long you're going to fly. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes. And like I say, in this case, you get automatic approval. If you wanted to go fly over above that hill with the trees on it, that's within the control zone that goes to the ground. That's where your drone will stop before it gets there. That one you file, the same type thing, except more extensive, especially the reasoning. And it takes up to 45 days or more, depending on the weather and how busy they are, to get approval or disapproval. If you get approval, then you can file whatever flight plan. Now, one thing I did not do when I first started flying, and I've started doing more and more now, is laying out a flight plan. You are supposed to go through a pre-flight check, and there are a number of them available. Either I can provide them, you can find them on the internet. Most of them are pretty comprehensive. We've added a few things in based on the way we fly, like putting filters on and making sure it's on properly and recalibrating the gimbal. But in any case, you do a pre-flight according to a checklist, pre-flight checklist. I suggest, if you know what you're going to be doing, is you write out a flight plan and say, okay, I'm going to go from here and I'm going to go fly over the athletic center. And while I'm over the athletic center, I want to take pictures, because invariably I'll get into flying and I'll forget to take the pictures, and I'll get back and say, rats. And all you have to put a new battery in, fly back and take the pictures, or do it another day, depending on how the weather's handling that day. But if you have a flight plan and you keep it close to your little pad or your phone, it tells you once you get over there, take pictures. So you take the pictures. So not a bad habit. Did it as a pilot when I flew. As a helicopter pilot, I followed it sort of, just like I do with everything else. One of the nice things about tactical air command, almost every rule where they had a regulation said, okay, you can't fly lower than 700 feet in this kind of weather, except for helicopters. You have to have 1.5 miles of visibility to land at the field, except for helicopters. Mainly because we could land at 5 miles an hour if we wanted to, instead of 150 in a jet. But if you want to keep your drone, do a pre-flight and do work out a flight plan for what you expect to do. And if you have any question about whether you're watching the battery, you can get one of these, very simple, little kitchen timer. It beeps, it clips on, it's got a magnified something. You could clip it on your pocket, you could clip it right on your collar. You set the amount of time on it, a lot less than the battery capability, especially on a windy day. And when it goes off, turn for home and come back. Even in the middle of taking a video, even in the middle of pictures, turn around and come back, put a new battery in, and then go take care of whatever you missed out on. But don't fly past the beeps. You'll also get a low battery warning and an extremely low battery warning, and the thing will land on you. So you can end up landing on somebody's house and their trees and their bushes or anything else. So don't do that. Appreciate everybody coming tonight. Another thing, do not do. You can see from this picture and from the reflection in my sunglasses that my drone is about 18 inches from my head.
Is that
This
what you got in
is
between the
not. No, this is another day. This is actually me sitting on my driveway. That's the houses
Oh my
across the
gosh.
street. I purposely took a picture of the drone reflected in my sunglasses, which is, like I say, do not do what I do what I say. Because all I had to do was twitch the stick the wrong way and I would have been eating blades. So, well, you know, I thought it was a cool picture, but don't do it. Okay?
Any questions?
Why do you fly risky and high? Dangerous stuff.
Because I was grounded when I was 33 years old because I broke my neck too many times in rescue. I walked into too many downed aircraft fires and I trashed my lungs and the oxygen. I ruined my heart, caused a heart attack last year. So it caused me a bunch of grief. So since 1986, I have not been in the air. I have not been able to travel in an airliner for a number of decades because I have seizures and other issues, and I'm currently not allowed to go more than 20 minutes each way, twice a week as a passenger in a car. I'm homebound. The drone gets my eyes back up in the air. And I like to fly like I flew a helicopter. And when I flew a helicopter, I flew low. I was a combat rescue helicopter, and the less they can see of you, the better off you are. I've actually dropped a cargo helicopter down between the waves in the Pacific and done what's called surfing, except we weren't touching the water. We had the fuselage between the waves with just the rotors above. We went into the beach along with the waves, and we did it at a point where it joined a river. So the minute we got close, we turned into the river and we were below the trees. If we had to fly over trees, we put the fuselage down in the top of the trees and the rotor above. And this meant that if you did not come back with the bottom of your aircraft and the front, especially green, you were flying too high. And you could actually get grounded in my unit if you did not come back with the front of your aircraft green, because it was too dangerous for what we were doing.
Where were you?
I was in Southeast Asia, and I was also in training. I trained the instructors down at Fort Rucker in Alabama. And I have had, at that time at least, a very good sense of situational awareness and also an ability to navigate. And we used maps that were actually photos that had been tinted and had the emblems put on them. So it was an actual photograph. So if it showed a little hut in the middle of a field, that hut was there. And I was continually being asked to slow down by the navigator because I was going faster than he could navigate. Well, I didn't care to slow down because I had had holes put in my aircraft before and had to land it once. And it just so happened I had to land it in an area that had cannibals and headhunters. And I thought it was a joke myself. We were told that during the mission that please stay in the aircraft. If we go down, don't go outside the aircraft because they use poison darts and they take your head. So they said, okay, before you start searching this area, go up to here to this point and fly across the village and pay attention to the outside of the huts. And sure enough, we did. We went out. And not all, but a number of the huts had 1, 2, 3, up to 7 heads hanging outside the hut. And they were told, there were 2 villages of headhunters at the time. It was in the Philippines.
They make a special kind of soup.
Yeah. They also make a special kind of hooch. In any case, they were told to knock it off because they were starting to build up the industry in the Philippines at the time, and a couple more heads appeared. One was apparently a Philippine senator's son, and they sanitized the village. They killed everything and anything, dogs, chickens, and everything else in one of the villages, and retrieved the shrunken head. But in any case, no, when I flew rescue there and in Southeast Asia, if we had to do ground search, one of the things we had to do is we had to have a drink with the local chief, and sometimes we had to have a meal. Both were challenging. Both, before we left the helicopter, we carried a large bottle of Pepto-Bismol, and we would take 2 or 3 big swallows. And then we go in and we would have a drink, we would have a meal, whichever, or both. We would come back to the aircraft. We had a sealed 30-gallon can with a sealing lid. It was automatic type lid. We would, excuse the language, but we'd throw up into it. Then we'd drink olive oil. Excuse me, that was backwards. We drank the olive oil before we got out of the aircraft to avoid absorbing the alcohol. We threw up, and then we drank the Pepto-Bismol to keep from tearing our throats up. We might do it 5 to 7 times in one day, because I was out for 16 hours plus on 12-hour mission days. We could only log 12 hours, but we'd be gone 16 hours plus looking. And we did. Sometimes we found the people, sometimes we didn't. Sometimes we found them late. But, you know, we found enough that we were willing to take it. And as an aircraft commander, which I eventually became, the hardest part was not that I would go in and look. It was the other 4 guys in the aircraft that I had to risk their lives also. And I had to okay anybody going out on the ground. And when I was in TAC, it just so happened we saw an A-10 go in, and I told the guys we were going to go look because the pilot ejected. And they said, well, we're not rescue. And I said, I do not care, get on the aircraft. Flew over, landed. I got out, went up the hill. It was burning. Poison gases were coming off because that's one of the natures of the A-10 and all of the modern aircraft. And the ordnance was going off because they put 30 millimeter in to maintain the center of gravity on the aircraft. He also had bombs on board, just practice bombs, but they actually exploded. The only thing I could tell on that aircraft was the Gatling gun barrels, and they were bent. That's how hot bad the crash was. He did eject, unfortunately. The self-righting Martin Baker seat took him straight up in the air and right over the fireball. So he didn't make it, but we didn't know it at the time. We couldn't tell if he was behind it or not. So, and of course, we didn't know if he was injured. And you can bleed out pretty quick if you get a compound fracture in the wrong place. So, but in any case, it was worth going up. But that's, you know, that's my background. I got worse stories. What can I say? But that's why I fly like I do. I really like to get back into the type. Well, it's only the drone in my eyes. I mean, you know, it's.
Anybody else? Any questions? Well, we hope you can join us next month, and it will be show us your stuff. So bring whatever you were impressed with in the way of a drone, or just come and listen to and see what we have. So thanks everyone for coming. I'm going to stop.